Hi, enjoy listening. The night sky exploded with color. High above the rolling hills of western North Carolina, fireworks painted bursts of gold, red, and violet across the humid August sky. The bursts echoed through the valley, bouncing off pine-covered ridges and startling the occasional owl or deer that hadn't yet gotten used to the noise. From the wide back patio of the Willow Ridge estate, guests applauded politely between sips of champagne. The orchestra played a jazzed-up version of At Last, and servers in crisp white jackets circled the crowd with silver trays of chocolate-dipped strawberries and bourbon-glazed pecans. It was the kind of night people would talk about for months. I heard he spent over $100,000 just on lighting, one woman whispered, fanning herself with a glossy wedding program. Not including the private chef and that string quartet from New York, replied her husband, a real estate agent from Boone. But look at her, the woman added, lowering her voice even more. She looks like she's going to her own funeral. Across the crowd, beneath the string lights and flower arches, stood Vanessa Cruz, now, legally, Mrs. Vanessa Whitaker. Her smile was tight. Her eyes were dry, but they looked bruised, as if she hadn't slept in days. The white lace gown clung to her tall frame like ivy, elegant and expensive. Her long dark hair was twisted in a low chignon, and a delicate diamond pendant glinted at her collarbone. She looked every bit the young bride in love, except for her eyes. Her eyes betrayed her. They were vacant, as if staring past everything: the band, the guests, the cake. Vanessa felt as though she were watching herself from far away. She didn't know most of the people around her. They were family friends of Harold Whitaker, business partners, former colleagues, local officials, politicians and bankers. A few nodded to her, warmly or awkwardly. Others kept their distance, like she might be a figure in a museum. Beautiful, unrelatable, untouchable. No one asked her how she felt. That was fine. She wouldn't have known what to say anyway. Her new husband, Harold, was holding court by the fountain. At 72, he still had the kind of posture people mistook for charm. Shoulders back, chin up, voice loud. His tuxedo was tailored perfectly, his silver hair combed straight back like an aging Hollywood star. He was telling a story about a business deal in '94, and everyone around him was laughing in perfect rhythm. Vanessa watched him out of the corner of her eye. She felt the dull throb of panic building in her chest again. For weeks, she'd managed to push it down, telling herself this was just a phase, a necessary evil, a mistake she could walk away from later. But tonight was real. The license was signed, the rings exchanged. The honeymoon suite was waiting. The fireworks finale lit up the sky in a crashing wave of sound. Vanessa turned her face toward the noise, letting the noise distract her, hoping the booming would drown out her thoughts. Someone squeezed her hand. She flinched. "There you are, darling," Harold said, appearing at her side. His breath smelled faintly of whiskey and breath mints. "Come, time to say goodnight to the guests." And then he leaned in close, voice dipping to a private tone. "Then we have our first night together, finally." Vanessa smiled with the corners of her mouth, but her fingers trembled. She followed him through the crowd, letting herself be paraded like a trophy. Guests clapped as they passed. A few whistled. The band launched into a slow jazz number. Someone called out a toast. As they neared the double doors leading into the main house, Vanessa tripped slightly on her train. Her heel sank into the grass. No one noticed, or maybe they pretended not to. Inside, the hallway smelled of wood polish and roses. The walls were lined with black and white photographs of the estate in its early days. Wheat fields, carriages, weddings from a century ago. Harold led her up the wide staircase, whistling softly to himself. She felt like a lamb being led to slaughter. When they reached the second floor, he stopped at the last door on the right. "Here we are," he said, swinging it open. "The honeymoon suite. You'll find the bathroom stocked with all the things you asked for. Perfume, lotions, that French soap you like." Vanessa stepped inside slowly. The room was spacious and elegant. A fireplace flickered in the corner. White rose petals were scattered on the bed. "I'll give you a few minutes to tidy up," Harold added, motioning to her dress. "You look like you've been wrestling pigs in that thing." Vanessa's cheeks flushed. She lowered her eyes. "Of course." He closed the bathroom door behind her with a soft click. She stood there for a long moment, gripping the edge of the sink, staring at her reflection. Her mascara had smudged slightly under her left eye. Her lipstick had faded. She didn't look like a bride. She looked like a runaway who had forgotten to run. Vanessa reached up and unpinned her hair slowly. Let it fall loose around her shoulders. Then she took off the earrings, the necklace, the dress, folded it neatly on the bench beside the tub. From her bag, she pulled out the silk robe Harold had gifted her during their engagement. It was beautiful, cream-coloured, with lace at the edges. She put it on slowly, tying the sash. She took a deep breath and walked out into the bedroom. What she saw made her stumble backward into the doorframe. The man sitting at the writing desk was not Harold. He was younger, 40s, maybe early 50s, wearing a tux, his back straight, eyes steady. On the table beside him lay a mask. A silicone mask, a white beard, a silver wig, glasses, and a manila folder. Vanessa's breath caught in her throat. "Hello, Vanessa," the man said, his voice rich and deep. She tried to speak, Nothing came. Sit down, he said. Vanessa couldn't move. Her breath came shallow. Her heart pounded in her throat as she stared at the man sitting in the honeymoon suite. The man who was not Harold Whittaker. Her skin prickled, the fine hairs on her arms standing up like they sensed something her brain hadn't yet processed. She clutched the robe tighter around herself. He rose from the chair slowly, not threatening, just deliberate. The light caught his face. It was familiar. Too familiar. Take your time, he said, walking toward the fireplace. He picked up a poker, stirred the logs. I know it's a shock. That voice. Vanessa's knees gave out. She sat down hard on the edge of the bed, hands trembling, eyes locked on the prosthetics on the desk. The wig, the beard, the silicone mask molded perfectly to mimic the face of the old man she had just married. No, she whispered. This isn't possible. He turned to her then, and the room seemed to spin. Caleb? She croaked. He gave a small nod. It's me. But Harold was never Harold, he cut in gently. He's real, but he's in Florida, fishing, retired 3 years ago. This whole place belongs to my father. He just never liked the spotlight. Her mind raced, trying to fit the pieces together. The interview, the job. All staged, Caleb said. You were never the first choice for CFO. You weren't even on the shortlist. He walked slowly to the desk and tapped the manila folder. I wanted you here, Vanessa, and I knew exactly how to get you. Vanessa swallowed hard. You lured me into this marriage? I did, Caleb said calmly. But don't flatter yourself. It wasn't for romance. She flinched. Do you remember what you said to me the day you left? His voice was colder now. The words edged with something darker. You didn't even have the guts to say it to my face. Just a note. I met someone. I'm sorry. I was young, she whispered. Confused. You were cruel, he replied. They sat in silence for a moment, the crackle of the fire the only sound between them. Caleb took off his cufflinks, laid them neatly on the desk. You humiliated me, destroyed me. Took everything we planned together and threw it away for a bigger wallet and a flashier car. I didn't know what I was doing, she said weakly. He turned on her, eyes blazing. Don't insult both of us by pretending you were some naive girl who got swept up. You were sharp, calculating. You saw Blake Montgomery and thought, that's my ticket. And when he dumped you, you just kept climbing, didn't you? From man to man, using whoever had something you wanted. Her face crumpled. Why are you doing this? He walked to her slowly, stopping just a few feet away. Because I wanted you to understand what it feels like to be powerless, to be used, to walk into something you thought you controlled, only to find out you're the one being played. Vanessa looked away, tears stinging her eyes. So this was all just a trap? No, he said quietly. This was a mirror. She looked up at him, confused. I wanted you to see yourself, he said. Not the woman you pretend to be in interviews or cocktail dresses. The real you. The one who steals, manipulates, lies. Vanessa's breath hitched. I have everything documented, he added, motioning to the folder. Every unauthorized transfer, every shell account, every dollar you siphoned from my father's company. So you're turning me in? She asked, her voice barely audible. He shook his head. No, not unless you force my hand. She blinked. You have two choices, Caleb said. You walk away from this fake marriage, from this company, from me, and you disappear, quietly. Or I hand this file to the district attorney and let you explain it to a judge. She stared at him, stunned. But the wedding? Annulled, he said. Tomorrow. The paperwork's already drawn up. The only thing I wanted tonight was to watch you walk into your own illusion. To see what it's like when the walls close in. Vanessa tried to catch her breath. Why, after all these years, why go to all this trouble? Caleb's eyes softened, just for a moment. Because I loved you once, and that version of me, the boy by the river, you murdered him, slowly, with every lie, every choice. This wasn't revenge, Vanessa. This was a funeral. He turned away. I'll have a car waiting for you in the morning. It'll take you back to Winston-Salem. You'll find your old job at the housing office still open. I made sure of it. I didn't want you to end up homeless. I just wanted you to understand. Vanessa stood shakily, wrapping her arms around herself like armor. You really think I haven't suffered? You haven't suffered enough, he said without turning around. She stepped toward him, a sob catching in her throat. Caleb, please. He turned then, and the look in his eyes silenced her. It wasn't hate. It wasn't love. It was something worse. It was indifference. I don't want your apology, he said quietly. I want your absence. And then he opened the door. The car dropped her off just after noon. It was a used silver sedan, spotless and silent, driven by a man in a black polo who didn't say a single word during the entire 3-hour ride from the estate back to Winston-Salem. Vanessa had watched the countryside roll by in silence, her heart like a dead weight in her chest. When the car pulled up to the familiar grey concrete building that housed the housing authority, she couldn't bring herself to step out right away. She sat there, stunned, until the driver opened her door for her. No suitcase, no jewelry, just her purse, her phone, and the echo of Caleb's voice repeating in her head, this wasn't revenge, this was a funeral. The apartment she'd left a few weeks ago, when she thought she was trading her life in for something shinier, cleaner, richer, was still as she'd left it. A draft slipped through the warped window frames. The mattress on the floor sagged in the middle. The kitchen still smelled faintly of mildew and discount bleach. Vanessa dropped her bag on the counter and sank into the single plastic chair by the wall. For the first time in years, there was no one to impress. No angle to play. No lipstick to fix. Just her. Just the weight of every choice she had made. 2 days later, she walked the 3 blocks back to the housing authority and asked to speak to her old manager. Tanya was surprised to see her. She gave Vanessa a careful once-over. "You don't look like a CFO," Tanya said flatly. "I'm not," Vanessa replied. "Not anymore." A pause. "You coming back?" "I need the work." Tanya leaned back in her squeaky swivel chair and folded her arms. "Didn't leave on the best terms, remember?" "I know," Vanessa said. "I wouldn't be here if I had anywhere else to go." Tanya studied her face for a long time. Finally, she sighed and pointed toward a stack of intake forms on the corner of the desk. "Start with these. We'll put you back on part-time. If you're serious, we'll talk about something more permanent in a few months." Vanessa nodded. "Thank you." She filled out the forms in silence. That night, she couldn't sleep. She lay on the mattress, staring at the ceiling, watching the shadows from passing cars cut across the plaster. Her thoughts kept circling back to the river. That summer, the rocks, the way Caleb's hand had fit into hers, like it belonged there. She hadn't thought of him in years, truly thought of him. Not in the passing way people think of high school or prom dresses, but really sat with the weight of what she'd done. Caleb had loved her, and she had stepped over that love like it was a puddle in the street. Now he was rich, confident, alive, and she was 39 and broke and pretending not to fall apart every time she clocked in at work. That next Sunday, on a whim, or maybe out of penance, Vanessa took the bus out of the city. She walked through the woods until she found the bend in the river. It had changed, of course. The banks were more eroded. The trees looked thinner. But the rock was still there. The one they used to sit on for hours, their feet dangling into the water. She sat down on it like she was 17 again, closed her eyes, and remembered. 17-year-old Vanessa had been all sharp bones and long legs, dark eyes too old for her face, and a mouth that could talk circles around anyone. In the group home, the other girls called her Ice Queen because she didn't cry. Not when they got yelled at, not when her roommates were taken to other homes, not even when her file came back stamped permanency, unlikely. But with Caleb, she was soft. He saw through the armor, the sharp tongue, the fake confidence. He listened. He remembered things. He brought her tangerines and sunflower seeds and left notes in her backpack. That night by the river, they'd promised to marry each other at 18. "We don't need much," Caleb had said. "Just a little place, maybe a garage business. I'll work on cars. You can help with the books. You're good with numbers." Vanessa had nodded and leaned her head on his shoulder. She remembered the warmth of him, the smell of clean sweat and gasoline. But somewhere between 17 and 19, something in her broke, and she chased something shinier, something that didn't love her back. Vanessa sat on the rock until the sun dipped low behind the trees. The air turned cooler. Her hands were stiff. She didn't cry, but when she stood to leave, she bent down and picked up a smooth, flat stone from the water's edge, slipped it into her jacket pocket, a reminder, not of Caleb, of herself, the version she had lost. The girl who hadn't yet ruined everything. It had been 6 weeks. Vanessa's days settled into a rhythm. Wake early, walk to work, file paperwork, answer calls, process housing requests. The office smelled like coffee and paper and resignation. Everyone there had seen too many people fall through too many cracks. At first, Vanessa was invisible. No one talked to her beyond what was necessary. But she didn't complain. She listened more than she spoke, said thank you when someone passed her a file or invited her to lunch. Slowly, the edges began to soften. Tanya started trusting her with small projects. A younger colleague, Missy, began asking her questions about budgeting and loan paperwork. Vanessa surprised herself with how much she knew. The job she'd once viewed as a stepping stone now felt like a lifeline. At night, she kept the lights off and sat by the window, looking out at the street below, nursing cups of weak chamomile tea. Her phone sat untouched. The luxury brands, the social accounts, the credit cards, all gone. The few remaining dresses in her closet were from discount outlets. Yet somehow, the silence didn't hurt as much as it used to. Until one Tuesday afternoon, it shattered. She was at her desk when Tanya knocked gently on the partition wall. "There's someone here to see you." Vanessa looked up, puzzled. "Who?" Tanya just tilted her head. Didn't give a name. Said you'd recognize him. And she did. The second she stepped into the lobby, Caleb stood near the glass entrance, hands in the pockets of a simple brown coat. Nothing flashy about him. No tailored suit, no mask of money. Just a man who looked tired, different, still him. He turned when she stepped forward, and for the first time since the night he unmasked himself, their eyes met without anger between them. Vanessa swallowed. "Why are you here?" "I was passing through," he said, nodding toward the street behind him. "My father still has a property about 30 minutes from here. I had business." She folded her arms, suddenly aware of how plain she looked. Worn loafers, the too thin cardigan, no makeup. "I'm not sure this is a good idea," she said. He nodded. "It probably isn't, but I thought about that rock by the river, and how I went back once, and you weren't there, and now I hear you were." She blinked. "You knew?" He gave a small, sad smile. "Small town. Word gets around." They stood in silence. People moved around them in the lobby. Clients, workers, but the two of them stayed locked in a private stillness. "You said what you needed to say," Vanessa said. "I heard it. I lived it. So why now?" Caleb looked at her for a long moment. "Because I'm not angry anymore." She stiffened. "And I'm not asking for forgiveness." "I didn't come to offer any," he said gently. "I just wanted to see if you were still standing." Her voice cracked. "Barely." He nodded. "But still." She opened her mouth, closed it. Then, "Did you come to gloat?" "No. I came to remember." Something shifted in her. "Why?" He looked around at the cheap chairs and flickering overhead light. "Because not everything about us was a lie. And because I never hated who we were." Her breath caught. Caleb stepped closer, his voice lower. "I thought destroying you would make me feel like I mattered again. It didn't. It just made me lonely in a different way." She lowered her gaze. "I deserved what you did." "Maybe," he said. "But the truth is, I needed to be the kind of man who could pull that off. And that's not a man I want to keep being." She looked up, surprised by the rawness in his tone. "I thought I could bury the pain by building an empire," he continued. "And I did. But it's cold. You can't build warmth on bitterness. It doesn't hold." Vanessa didn't know what to say, so she didn't say anything. Caleb nodded once more, as if acknowledging the space between them. Then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, folded square of paper. He handed it to her. No envelope, just her name. She took it slowly. "I don't expect anything from you," he said. "No response, no promises. Just read it when you're ready." And then he turned and walked out. Vanessa didn't open the letter for 3 days. She kept it in her top drawer at work, under the stapler, where it wouldn't mock her from the desk. But each time she reached for a pen, her fingers brushed against it, like a quiet reminder of the path she never took. Finally, on Friday night, she sat down by the window with her mug of tea and opened it. It was short. "Vanessa, we weren't meant to last, but we mattered. I don't want revenge anymore. I want peace. For both of us. I saw a glimpse of the girl I loved when you sat on that rock. If she's still there, take care of her. Caleb." Vanessa folded the note carefully, like it was something sacred. Then she cried. For everything lost. For everything wasted. And for the tiny, fragile piece of herself she thought was gone, but maybe wasn't. The weeks that followed passed quietly. Caleb didn't call. He didn't write again. And Vanessa didn't try to reach him. But the letter stayed folded in her purse, tucked inside the inner pocket like a secret only she was allowed to carry. Not hope, not exactly, but something softer. A thread that reminded her she hadn't always been who she became. Life at the housing authority rolled forward in its usual rhythm. The city didn't slow down for personal awakenings. Rent still went unpaid. Letters still came in from tenants facing eviction. But now something had shifted in Vanessa. She wasn't just working a job. She was watching, listening, learning. And for the first time, she began to understand the other side of poverty. Not the side she had run from, but the people who lived in it with dignity. Tenants who clipped coupons for their grandkids. Women who brought in homemade banana bread just to thank the staff. Men who fixed neighbours' plumbing in exchange for gas money. There was a kind of grace in it. One day, Missy leaned over the divider between their desks and said, "Hey, I saw that housing breakdown spreadsheet you did last week. You're good at this." Vanessa smiled faintly. "Thanks. You ever think of doing more, like case management, budget coaching?" Vanessa looked at her. "You think I could?" "Please," Missy said. "You taught me how to balance 3 grants without even breaking a sweat." Later that week, Tanya called her into the office. "You've been steady," Tanya said. "I've watched. You could have fallen apart after everything, but you didn't. I'm offering you full-time again." With a bump. Vanessa blinked. "Why?" Tanya leaned forward. "Because not everyone who gets knocked down gets back up, and you did." That night, Vanessa bought herself a rotisserie chicken, a small bottle of wine, and a new notebook. She ate by the window, not out of loneliness, but habit. The streetlights cast soft halos over the pavement outside. Her building was still drafty. Her mattress still sagged. But the air didn't feel so suffocating anymore. She opened the notebook and wrote 3 words on the first page. Build. Don't chase. Then, in a different pen, fix what you can. Leave the rest behind. The next weekend, she took the bus out again, not to the river this time, but to an old industrial part of town. There was a broken-down garage building that had been for sale for months. She'd noticed it years ago, back when she used to walk the long way home from her first job in customer service. It had cracked windows, weeds growing up through the lot, and half the roof sagging like a tired shoulder. But there was something honest about it. She stood across the street and stared for a long while. Caleb wanted to fix cars, she remembered, and I was supposed to run the books. That version of their life had been too small for her once. But now, looking at the ruined shell of the garage, she felt something stir. Not regret, not longing, something new. What if she could build something from the pieces? Not for Caleb, not even for her past, but because it might be the only way forward. Vanessa started a spreadsheet, called it the If Project. It wasn't a business plan, not yet, just an idea. She listed skills she had: budgeting, finance, admin. Then she added people she'd met in her job who might need work, or space, or a second chance. She did research. She applied for a small community grant under her own name, using her own credentials. She didn't tell anyone. She didn't expect anything. But in the quiet evenings, she kept sketching floor plans on scrap paper. A coffee machine in one corner, a desk in the back, a place where people like her, former dreamers, second chances, could come and build something small, something real. A month later, she got the call. "Ms. Bennett," the voice said, "your grant was approved. We'd like to meet about next steps." Vanessa froze. She stood in the middle of her tiny kitchen, surrounded by peeling linoleum and cheap cabinets. Not grief, not shame. Hope. She didn't call Caleb. She thought about it once. She even typed out a message. The garage on West Clay might finally come back to life. But she didn't send it. Not because he didn't deserve to know, but because finally she didn't need him to. The garage was a wreck. 3 broken windows, graffiti across the back wall, and a soft puddle of oil that seemed to bleed from somewhere underground. But when Vanessa walked through the space with the city liaison, clipboard in hand and steel-toed boots on loan, she didn't flinch. "This one's got a good skeleton," the inspector muttered, knocking a rusted pipe with the back of his hand. "You sure you're up for this?" "I'm sure," Vanessa said. It wasn't a lie. She wasn't ready, not really. But she was done waiting for someone to hand her a life already wrapped in ribbon. She'd unwrapped her illusions one heartbreak at a time. Over the next few weeks, the garage came to life slowly. Vanessa hired a team of 2 contractors, an ex-electrician named Raoul and a woman named Doreen, who used to work drywall but now did general repair. Both came through her work connections. Both needed the hours. Neither asked questions about who Vanessa used to be. Every night she stayed late, sweeping dust into garbage bags, sorting through leftover bolts, salvaging rusted shelves. She called it reclaiming. Her body ached in places that had never been sore before. Her nails chipped, her hands cracked, and she didn't miss the spa. Not once. It was late one Friday when she first saw him again. She'd just finished locking up when she noticed a black truck parked across the street. It was sleek, newer than anything in the neighborhood, but not flashy. She paused on the steps, and then the door opened. Caleb stepped out, his coat open against the wind, hands shoved in his pockets. They stared at each other across the distance. She didn't wave. He didn't call out. But eventually he crossed the street. She met him halfway. "You cut your hair," he said quietly. "You're the first to notice." He looked past her at the building. "You really did it." She shrugged. "Not yet. Still drywall to finish. Plumbing needs work. But yeah, it started." He nodded slowly. "I wasn't sure if you ever would." She tilted her head. "Did you come to tell me I shouldn't?" He gave a faint smile. "No, I came because I missed it." "The garage?" "No," he said, eyes steady on hers. "The girl who saw potential in junk." She exhaled sharply. "I kept the old ledger," she said after a pause. "The one we used to scribble numbers in. From high school. back when we were going to call it Second Chance Auto. Caleb looked genuinely surprised. You kept it? She smiled, small and proud. Buried under a box of scarves I never wear. Found it a month ago. Still got the page where I drew that dumb wrench logo. It wasn't dumb, she said softly. They stood there, neither speaking. Finally, Caleb said, I know I said I didn't want anything from you. Vanessa stiffened slightly. I still don't, he added. But if you're going to make this place real, I'd like to help. Not as a partner, not with money, just hands. Vanessa stared at him. He shrugged. I fix things, remember? The next day, he showed up with a set of tools and a quiet respect she hadn't expected. He didn't boss anyone around, didn't throw money at problems, just worked, sanding door frames, rewiring outlets, fixing. Raoul nodded at him in quiet approval. Doreen liked that he brought donuts. For days, they didn't talk about the past. Not the betrayal, not the revenge, not the gilded years in between. They worked side by side in the present, shoulders covered in drywall dust, boots caked in dirt. Vanessa noticed the way Caleb looked at her now, not with hunger or pain, but with something closer to recognition, as if the ruins had finally stopped getting in the way. One night, they sat on overturned crates in what would eventually become the waiting area. It was quiet, late, the kind of silence that hummed with what wasn't said. I used to think success had to be shiny, Vanessa whispered. Caleb turned to her. And now? Now I think it's just being able to stand still and not hate yourself. He nodded. Then, after a long pause, she didn't answer right away. I used to wonder that all the time, she finally said. But now, I think the version of me who would have stayed back then, she wasn't ready. Caleb looked down at his hands. And you? She asked. Do you still want revenge? He shook his head. No, but I want something else. She raised an eyebrow. What? To remember you without hating myself for it. Vanessa smiled. A tired but genuine thing. Then help me finish this place, and we'll both get that. That night, she didn't cry. For the first time in years, she slept without a single ache in her chest. There was still no promise between them, no romance reborn. Just dust, sweat, and something real taking shape beneath their hands. The garage officially reopened on a rainy Tuesday in early April. No ribbon cutting, no press release. Just a cardboard sign taped to the door that read, Second Chance Auto, under new life. The ownership section on the business permit listed Vanessa Bennett, sole proprietor. Below it, she'd written a note to herself in pen before filing the form. If it falls apart, it's still mine. Word spread quietly at first. Raoul's cousin brought in a rusted-out Buick. Doreen's niece stopped by to hang flyers at the laundromat. A man from the housing complex brought his daughter's bike for repair. Then, a woman asked if they did brake pads. Then another asked about inspections. Caleb was usually the first one in and the last to leave. He never asked for more than coffee and a working socket wrench. Vanessa paid him what she could, minimum wage at first, then a little more when a microloan came through. He never complained. They barely spoke about what had come before. Their rhythm was simple. Work, fix, sweep, lock up, repeat. It was peaceful, and it scared her. Late one afternoon, as Vanessa scrubbed oil off the waiting room floor, she spotted her reflection in the glass door. Hair tied back, smudges on her face, jeans with a tear at the knee. She didn't look like the woman who'd once dropped $500 on a gold-plated desk lamp because it looked elevated. She looked like herself. Real, capable, tired, but grounded. That same night, she got a call from Gregory, her ex-husband. At first, she didn't recognize the number. Then came his smooth voice, still rich with rehearsed calm. "Vanessa, I was hoping we could talk." She froze. "Why?" "I heard about your little shop. Thought maybe you'd like a partner who understands business." There was a smile in his voice, the kind that used to feel reassuring, but now made her want to shower. "I'm not looking for partners," she said. "Come on, V. Don't be naive. You and I both know you're not going to survive long fixing up junkers with a man you left behind. You need capital, connections, experience." She said nothing. "I can still help you. I'm offering that." Vanessa glanced out the garage window, where Caleb was hunched over a Subaru, hands steady, expression quiet and focused. "You're not offering help," she said flatly. "You're offering control." Again, a pause. "You've changed," Gregory said, almost bemused. "No," she said. "I just stopped lying to myself." And she hung up. After she told Caleb about the call, he didn't say much, just nodded and went back to work. But she noticed he left his toolbox behind that night. Something he never did before. The next few weeks tested her new piece. An unexpected plumbing issue flooded the back office. A city inspector delayed their permit for a week over an outlet code error. A teenager tagged the side of the building with a spray-painted crown. And through it all, Vanessa kept showing up. She learned to use a caulking gun. She patched walls. She handled invoices. She went to sleep at night, aching, but proud. And one morning, Doreen brought in cinnamon rolls and said, "You don't act like a boss. That's a compliment." But the moment that cracked something open came quietly. A girl came into the garage. A young woman, maybe 22, with a shaking voice and a car that barely ran. She looked like someone Vanessa used to be. Scared, stretched too thin, pretending to be in control. "I need a new belt," the girl said, gripping the steering wheel. "And maybe brakes. I don't know. I just need it to last one more month." She handed Vanessa a small wad of cash, mostly ones and coins. Vanessa looked at it, then at the girl. She walked outside, where Caleb was under the hood. "Can we comp this one?" He wiped his hands. How bad is it? Pretty bad. But she's trying. He nodded. We'll make it work. That night, Vanessa wrote a new line in her notebook. You don't have to fix people. Just give them somewhere they can fix themselves. She didn't call it charity. She called it return on investment. As spring deepened, so did something between her and Caleb. Not romance exactly, but understanding. A shared ease. One night after closing, he turned to her and said, You know, I don't hate you anymore. She smiled. That's nice. I think I forgave you the first week, but I needed you to feel what it cost. I did, she said, every second. I know. They sat in silence for a while. Then she asked, Do you still love me? He didn't answer right away. I don't think I ever stopped, he said finally. But it's different now. How? It's not about needing you to come back. It's about being glad I get to see who you became. She felt the weight of that. And then she whispered, I think I love you too, but maybe it's still growing back, like something new. Caleb nodded. That's fair. No kiss, no promises, just truth. And that was enough. The days warmed into June. The garage no longer smelled like mold and stale rubber. It smelled like oil, metal, coffee, and something Vanessa had never associated with her life before. Hope. Customers now came by name. A retired postal worker with a rattling Ford pickup. A single mum who always brought her kids' drawings to hang near the register. A rideshare driver who started tipping them for being honest. Each face reminded Vanessa of how much she'd once overlooked. One Saturday morning, a girl named Lily came in with a busted muffler and a notebook full of questions. Can I intern here? She asked boldly. I'm in community college. I want to work on cars. But no one wants to train someone who looks like me. Vanessa blinked. Lily was short, bright-eyed, and didn't flinch when the car jack shifted slightly. She reminded Vanessa of herself, back before the nails, the heels, the champagne she never liked. Show up on Monday, Vanessa said. Wear boots. Lily grinned like she'd been handed the keys to a kingdom. That afternoon, Vanessa sat on the curb outside the garage, legs stretched out, sipping coffee. Vanessa looked at him. You keep saying that. I don't mean your job or the dirt under your nails. I mean, you look like someone who sleeps at night. She smiled. I do, usually in a twin bed, with a raccoon in the alley for company. He laughed. There was comfort in that laughter now. Not nostalgia, not longing, just something real, something steady. That same night, she received a certified letter from her divorce attorney. The final part of her settlement had come through. A small cash payout and the transfer of her name from all of Gregory's remaining assets. She held the paper for a long time, not because she missed any of it, but because it confirmed something she hadn't dared admit out loud. She was finally free. Later that week, Vanessa and Caleb drove to a nearby junkyard to scout for used parts. It was the first time she'd been in a car with him since the day they split. She rode shotgun. He didn't play music. They drove in silence, but it wasn't tense, just quiet, just theirs. At the yard, she found an old service bell buried in a crate, the kind that used to sit on reception counters. She pressed it once. It rang out, clean and sharp. "We should put this by the front desk," she said. Caleb arched an eyebrow. "You planning to stop greeting everyone personally?" "No," she smiled. "But sometimes people need to be heard before they're seen." As the summer rolled in, the business turned its first small profit. Vanessa didn't spend it. She tucked it away in a coffee tin above the breaker box, labelled in Sharpie, "Emergency and Donuts." She let Lily paint a mural on the side of the building. Two hands holding a wrench, surrounded by stars and wildflowers. Below it, in bold letters, "Everything can be rebuilt." One evening, as the light faded, Caleb lingered in the office, flipping through an old binder. He held up a photo, grainy and worn, from their high school days. They were both grinning in front of the old, original garage, Vanessa's arm flung over his shoulder. She looked at it for a long time. "I was so sure I had to become someone else to matter," she said. "You didn't." "I know that now." He looked up at her. "I was angry for a long time," he said. "Thought you traded in our life for something shinier." "I did," she said. "But I was wrong about what was actually valuable." Later that week, Gregory showed up at the shop, not in person, but on screen. An article appeared online. Local socialite, Vanessa Bennett, now running garage in charmingly downscale neighborhood. It was part mockery, part curiosity. But it went semi-viral. Some of her old social circles shared it with hashtags like #glowdown or "from gold to grease." Vanessa stared at her phone for a full minute. Then she closed the article, deleted the link, and went back to sorting brake pads. That weekend, she hosted a small barbecue in the garage parking lot. Free food, music on a Bluetooth speaker, and a table where she let kids paint old hubcaps with neon spray paint. It wasn't glamorous, but it was full of stories, of laughter, of second chances, full of people who knew her now, not as someone's ex-wife or someone's mistake, but as someone who stayed, who built, who showed up. As she stood by the grill, Lily came over and asked, "Do you ever miss it? The money, the status?" Vanessa looked around. Caleb was teaching a 10-year-old how to check tire pressure. Raoul was dancing awkwardly with Doreen by the speaker. An old man from down the block was sitting in a lawn chair with a burger and a grin. "No," she said. "I only miss what I pretended to feel back then." Lily frowned. "What's that?" "Enough." That night, Vanessa sat on the shop floor alone. The lights were off. The moon filtered through the high garage windows. She listened to the silence, the steady hum of the world moving on, And for the first time in years, she didn't feel like a fraud. She felt whole. And she didn't want anything more than what she already had. It rained the day the old sign finally fell. Second Chance Auto, rusted letters, barely hanging on, had tilted dangerously for months. But no one expected it to drop in the middle of a Thursday thunderstorm. Vanessa was in the back office when she heard the crash. She ran out to find Caleb and Lily standing over the mangled metal, staring at it like it was a tombstone. "Guess it really wanted to retire," Caleb said, brushing water off his shoulders. Vanessa looked at the sign lying crooked in a puddle. "Let's not put it back up," she said. "Let's make something new." 2 weeks later, the new sign went up. Simple black letters on clean white steel. Bennett & Co. Auto. Underneath, smaller. Honest work. Real repair. No suits allowed. The first customer under the new name was a teacher with a flat tire. She smiled at the sign, pointed at the line about suits and said, "Guess I'm safe." Vanessa smiled back. "As long as you're not hiding cufflinks." By midsummer, the shop had become something else. Part repair centre, part community anchor. Vanessa started a weekly Women Under the Hood workshop, teaching basic car care to anyone who showed up. Most came for the free donuts and stayed for the sense of control. Teen mums, retired grandmothers, bartenders between shifts. It was messy, hilarious, and healing. She never expected to enjoy teaching, but she did. Not because it gave her authority, because it reminded her how many people had once assumed she couldn't do anything with her hands except wave. Gregory never came around again, though every so often someone from her old world would find her. An acquaintance from the club, a former friend who didn't know how to ask questions without sounding condescending. One woman stopped by just to stare. "You actually run this place?" she asked, stepping carefully to avoid oil spots. Vanessa nodded. "Want a tour?" The woman blinked. "No offense, but why?" Vanessa paused, then said simply, "Because I finally stopped selling what I never wanted." She offered her a coffee. The woman declined. And that was that. In late August, Vanessa stood behind the counter, watching Lily and Caleb argue over spark plugs. "I'm telling you, it does make a difference," Lily insisted. "You just don't like change." Caleb shook his head. "It's not change. It's junk science." Vanessa leaned back, crossed her arms, and smiled. This was her family now. Scrappy, stubborn, loud, and real. That night, after closing, she and Caleb sat on the roof of the shop, feet dangling over the edge. The city buzzed below, but their street was quiet. Somewhere in the distance, someone played jazz from an open window. Vanessa leaned her head against his shoulder. I used to think love was a prize, she said softly. Something you win if you're perfect enough. Caleb didn't answer right away. Then he said, I used to think love meant saving someone. They sat for a moment in that truth. And now? She asked. Now, I think it's just showing up. Every day, even when it's hard. Especially then. She turned to him, and for the first time in years, she kissed him. Not out of guilt, or nostalgia, or habit, but with clarity. It wasn't the kiss of a second chance. It was the kiss of a first one, finally earned. That fall, Vanessa moved into a small rental house 2 blocks from the shop. It had a creaky porch, chipped paint, and a yard overtaken by wild sunflowers. She kept a lawn chair out front, and some evenings, neighbours would stop by just to sit. They didn't talk about the past. They talked about spark plugs, soup recipes, rent prices, street repairs, and sometime, because some things don't need fixing, they just need space. On the 1-year anniversary of reopening the garage, Lily gave Vanessa a gift, a framed print that read, You don't rebuild the life you lost, you build the one that lets you stay. Vanessa hung it on the back wall, right above the pegboard of tools, and when customers asked what it meant, she just smiled and said, It's about cars. But it wasn't. It was about everything she'd come to understand. That gold flakes. That silence rots. That leaving can be brave, but staying and changing is the hardest, most precious thing of all. And that sometimes the glitter you chased wasn't glitter at all. It was just broken glass. If you like the story, I would be very happy to have your support. Click the thumbs up. And to not miss new stories, subscribe and click on the bell. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, and all the best.